Hello, everyone. I first just want to introduce the discussion that we're going to be doing. We're talking about using the internet to support Indigenous youth leadership. There was a bit of a mistake in the agenda, but that's okay. There's a lot of pieces coming together today, so mistakes are going to happen. And in BC and a lot of parts of Canada, one of our protocols is to do a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement is not a part of my own culture, so what I like to do is I like to acknowledge the protectors and caretakers of this land here, who have been taking care of this land for hundreds of years and much longer than colonization. And I like to acknowledge Mother Earth. She has her own story before buildings were here, before we were here. This land that we're on right now has her own story. She has her own family. She has her own history. And I like to acknowledge that before beginning, and it helps me ground myself into the space. So how many people here are Indigenous youth or Indigenous youth advocates? Oh, great. So this is our community, and we're hoping to expand this community much wider today. So my name is Linnea Dig. I'm Kwakwaka'wakw and Nisga'a and Tsimshian from the northwest coast of Canada. And as a young person, I really struggled to find my voice. Because of oppression, I struggled with my identity, and I didn't feel that I had any power to create change around me as I grew up. And as a result, I struggled with things like alcoholism, eating disorders, bullying, a lot of things.
Hello everyone, Chu, Uklama, Hotwith, Wayness. My name is Joshua Watts, and I'm from the Nuu-chah-nulth and Coast Salish Nations in BC. Coming to you today from Victoria, and just wanted to share a bit about my personal story for a quick note. So I grew up outside of my ancestral community, and it kind of had a bunch of different chain effects in my life that I didn't really realize till now. But I'm mentioning that because through platforms that are through the internet, I was able to kind of talk about something a little bit different. We talked a lot about connecting to each other with the internet during this summit, but for my part of this presentation, I'd like to talk about how the internet can be used to connect to yourself in a different way. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
And this is me. I came into the world like a beam of light, clearly. And I've continued to try to spread that light. And one of the ways that I was able to spread that light was through activism and advocacy. So as I mentioned before, part of my history was really challenging, really dark, and I suffered a lot. There was suffering in my life, as I'm sure a lot of you have had. And something that was really hard for me was that feeling of loneliness, feeling like I was the only one in the world who had a perspective of wanting to make the world a better place, wanting to connect with those around me, and just wanting to have a different worldview on the way that things happen in the world. And how many people here know about what I Don't Know More is? So a few of you. So I Don't Know More was the biggest Indigenous protest that have ever happened in Canada, and I Don't Know More did reach some places globally. And through I Don't Know More and my relationship with my dad, who was an artist in activist in his community and a chief, I was able to find my voice and become that leader that I wanted to be. And so what we did through I Don't Know More was create our own movement. It was called a Wallace Kines, which means to make a statement, and we used culture as a way to respond to policy and government, to have ceremonies that reinstilled that strength within people.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the work that I do through the internet, and this is an image actually of an old John Weber drawing, and it was made in the late 1700s. He was an artist aboard the Captain Cook expedition, And the article I want to talk about in the middle is actually a mask. It's a seagull mask. And this is an actual image of the actual object that's held in the British Museum. And this slide is kind of like an example of a tool that a lot of Northwest Coast artists and cultural carriers such as myself often see when we're surfing the web. I don't have access to the British Museum's collection in person, but however, I'm able to access a ton of information just based on these online databases. And so that's allowed me to extend the span of my work that I do. A lot of the work is in communities, working with families to work on their potlatch ceremonial objects. And that was kind of something I wanted to demonstrate to everyone here.
And this young lady here is my daughter. And we're speaking back to culture and knowledge. The internet has been a way that I've been able to connect with my daughter and be the guidance that she needs, especially when it comes to the language. So this is my Walatyu, which means reason for being. And a couple of years ago, when she was only 5 or 6, I was telling her to get her shoes on. And so I said, "Sweetheart, get your D-Bayou on." And she said, "No, Mom. It's not D-Bayou, it's D-Bayou because it's 2 shoes." And she has had the fortune of growing up in our community, and she teaches me a lot of our language all the time. But as a mother, sometimes I really struggled with not being able to champion her, not being able to be the one who's teaching her the language. And so I have been able to utilize tools like First Voices, which is an app that a lot of First Nations in Canada use to share language. There's also cultural groups and language groups on Facebook, as well as our cultural leader in our community who's doing a lot of the language revitalization work is my cousin. Her name is Pee-wee Alfred, and her information is so accessible because every day she does a word of a day and a sentence of a day on her own personal Facebook profile. And so in that way, I've been empowered to be that leader for my daughter, but also to instill that strength within her so that that strength can continue on for future generations.
I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about this expedition that I was a part of earlier this year. And it was an expedition off the coast of Vancouver Island. We went out about 200 kilometers offshore, and the objective was to find a bit more information on these sponge and coral forests that are on top of the summits of seamounts that are under the water. And so this is our team. We're all broad backgrounds. I was the New Toronto representative, and I just want to ask a quick question. Does anybody know what this big white globe is on our boat? It's a technical question, but yeah, it was our satellite aboard. I didn't really know why it was on the boat for a long time when I was on there, and I would sit on the deck and wonder, like, what is this? But I saw Ocean Networks Canada, and I just wanted to share a little bit about the resource that and all of our live streaming content, all of our communications was through that satellite. And the reason why I'm talking about this expedition is because part of the work that I was doing on board was reaching out to kids and students that were involved with science camps back on the mainland. And something that the internet is often used for in Indigenous communities in Canada is it's a way to bring an experience, bring some education into a community that may have not had that opportunity to bring a live person or to bring them out to the experience. And so we were just Zoom calling some of the kids, and I'm just showing them our funny microscope cover, which is a minion. And yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that these are Indigenous kids that were participating, and we were presenting the live science, and it just made them feel like they were a part of that work, and I just wanted to reiterate how special that was. This is a group photo of Linnea and I, and we were working with a nonprofit called Waterlution, and they, I guess in a nutshell, they educate people based on how important water is, and so anything related to water, and us being coastal First Nations, we wanted to talk about our connection with the water, but also how our whole Mother Earth is connected through the water. All our communities are connected to the water. And so we often spend time using Zoom calls as another way to bring that education to the classrooms that may not be able to cover the cost or have really a budget to have that experience for the children.
The internet is a great way to support nonprofit organizations and Indigenous youth. I work for a nonprofit organization called We Matter. And what We Matter is an online-based campaign that focuses on the stories and voices of Indigenous youth. The co-founders are Calvin and Tenchai Redvers, and they grew up in Hay River, Northwest Territories, which is a bit of a more rural area of Canada. And growing up there themselves and what they saw in their communities was a lot of struggles. And a few years ago, prior to them founding this organization, there was a series of suicide pacts that happened in the Northwest Territories. 3 communities got hit, and children as young as 10 committed suicide. And so their idea was to create something that was different, and they actually started with a group of 10 videos. And these videos were a way to reach young people. What they did was they reached out to role models, Indigenous leaders, allies, to create messages to instill within youth that no matter how hopeless life may feel, there is always a way forward, and that they are never alone in what they're experiencing. And so one of the really cool things about this campaign is that we had people such as Ashley Collingbull submit a message, a woman who is widely admired by Indigenous young ladies, and she shared some of her struggles.
And I just wanted to connect Hawaii to Northwest Coast culture. A couple of years ago, I was a part of a cultural exchange, and what we did is we raised funds with our community from the Squamish Nation, and we actually brought a group of around 20 youth to Oahu. And the experience, I think it was about 2 weeks we were here, and the experience we got was something that was not just tourism-based. It was actually coming to the communities. I believe we stayed in the Leleokalani Center. I'm not sure where exactly where it was on the island, but we were touring the island with the community here, and it all started from there's a gathering in BC that's called Tribal Journeys, and it's annual now, but all the coastal First Nations will venture to the host nations, and the Hawaiian Indigenous people would sometimes participate in those, and that's how we linked up and connected. And so I just wanted to mention that. This is some pictures of our we're actually helping plant some plants on the island, and a lot of the kids really take that experience and they share about it still. It's made a long-term impact in their lives. And I just wanted to connect it to the internet. How it's relevant is that we weren't able to organize that without the use of the internet, without the kids, researching into their family's genealogy and finding out where they're from, and it just made the experience that much more meaningful. And there they all are. There we all are. This is just a video of us. We're paddling in the ocean because they first came to BC in the canoe. They wanted us to try out their canoes over here on the island.
This is a piece that was done by my dad. His name is Bo Dick, and he passed away a few years ago. And this piece he actually did for my older sister when her school was having their own potlatch in Haida Gwaii, which is a traditional ceremony. So they were doing like a play potlatch so that they can learn about those traditions and what those ceremonies look like and how to organize them, so that that's instilled in them when they're young. And it actually depicts a circle of young people holding hands, because my dad was a true believer that young people were the ones who were going to lead the way and create that change that's needed to heal and to move forward in a good way. And this is a picture of me and my friend Summer. And my friend Summer, I actually haven't met. I've known her for a couple of years, and this is my first time meeting her just a couple of weeks ago. And I actually met her because I was invited to join an Australian Canadian Indigenous youth group, where we would meet every month, share some of the challenges that we face in our own regions, in our own countries, and work together to try to fill some of those gaps and try new programs and share information. So I think that the internet is really fundamental in global outreach, a way that we can all learn from each other and collectively have that voice to create the changes that we want to make as Indigenous people protecting our lands. It really is about protecting all of Mother Earth. And there are Indigenous people across the world who are fighting the same fights that we are in Canada, in Hawaii, in Australia. And so I think that the internet is a really important part of that. And I was really excited to meet Summer for the first time. And it brings me back to a word that my dad used to always share with me, and that word is lalakinis. And lalakinis means coming and going in all directions. And my dad often referred to this word when he talked about activism because he never felt that it was Indigenous or that feminism was just for women, or that environmental issues were just for people who lived in rural areas. He really believed that it was about all of us coming together and recognizing that we are all going in different ways, in different directions. We all have our own experiences, our own individual identities, and thank you for being a part of this conversation. I know that went really fast and we touched on a lot of things really quickly. And please feel free to come and ask us questions, learn more about the things that we're doing, because there's so much more to this conversation. This is 10 to 15 minutes of quickly the different ways that the internet can be utilized to support Indigenous youth leadership. But it's also a way to start a conversation on opportunities and possibilities. There are a lot of concerns and fears in our communities, which are all very valid. But I just wanted to offer a new perspective, and something that I see in my own community sometimes is that when elders and older generations have that fear, have that apprehension for change, it's often the young people that inspire them. And that's why youth leadership is so important altogether, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, and no matter where you live in the world. Do the closing.
So just to kind of we wanted to end it off with a little bit of a fun question. And it came to mind that we often define ourselves by what we do or what we enjoy, some recreational things. So I wanted to ask, just a quick show of hands, how many people watch Netflix in here? Okay, almost everybody. How many people have Crave? Does anybody watch Game of Thrones in the room? Did anybody get Crave just because you wanted to watch Game of Thrones? Or is that just me? And also, Star Wars. Has anybody watched the new Star Wars? The newer ones? Not really? Who thinks the original trilogy is the only way to go? Okay, more show of hands. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of present that as just a fun exercise and think that that's kind of a community in itself. You can identify with those who share your same interests, share your same opinion. And it's the same with culture, it's the same with Indigenous knowledge, and we all relate to each other on that level. And so thank you for spending your time, and thank you for having us here. It's been an honor, and thank you for allowing us on your territory to share our information and share our story.